Yep. Cool. How you doing?
Doing
Good
all
to
right. How are you today?
Doing good. Yeah, I'm excited to chat. Um,
I've
for
been
those
immensely looking
who,
forward to this.
yeah, for those who don't know who you are in my audience, your artist name is Skybreak, and they'll know that from the description. But maybe you could do a quick little rundown of who you are, what you do, how you feel, all that kind of shit.
How I feel. Hey guys, my name is Jack. I make music as Skybreak. I've been at it for a few years. I won like a remix contest in 2020 for Disciple, and now I've gotten to make this my life. I'm 22 years old. I'm just about to graduate college this week, which is crazy. I've been kind of juggling that with music for a while, and this year I'm putting out my album called Half Blood. I've been known for this sort of more melodic, color-basy sound, kind of like a pioneer of that or whatever. But I got really inspired by UKG and drum and bass for a while, and I decided to put my skills to the test, and I was surprised how much I learned about myself while making it. And I'm really happy to be here because I'm a big fan of Mr. Bill. I literally fell asleep to your tutorials over COVID. I kind of locked in completely at that time because I didn't.
Wait, so did you only get into producing music over COVID?
No, oh god, no! I've been at it since 2014.
Okay, I was gonna say
Valentine's
that's wild.
Day. Valentine's Day 2014 was the first day I ever looked at a DAW. Soundation Studio, free online DAW. It was absolutely god awful. I kind of want to do a video someday where I go in and try to use it again. But yeah, it's been 11 years. That's disturbing. But kind of more 5 years in the limelight of taking this more seriously, I guess.
Wait, and you're 22, so you started producing music when you were 11?
Yes, I did.
Damn, that's wild. I didn't start until I was I think 17 or 18 or something, but that still means at this point, now I'm 37, so I've been at it for 20 years, but...
It's like my whole lifespan, basically.
It's wild to me that a lot of people who are your age, like Eli Derp or Zenith or Noir or whatever, you're all 20 to 23-ish or something, and you've all been producing for more years than you haven't been.
Yeah, no, actually, that's crazy to think about, that half my life has been taken up by this. I feel like part of it is just the lower level of accessibility, because you think about it, and back in the day, if you wanted to make electronic music, you needed to spend a lot of money on software. You needed to have a computer powerful enough for that software. And even before that, you needed a whole mix board and the whole 9 yards. You had to go to a school to learn how to use a microphone or whatever. And now it's just the layer of accessibility, or the degree of accessibility, is so much higher, right? Because we just have all this online software that's reasonably cheap. I bought FL for $200 when I was 12 or something. I begged mommy and daddy for it. And I've gotten lifetime free updates. And then we have a lot of really good, affordable, free software like Vital, some of the Synth audio stuff, for example. So I really do feel like anyone can get into it at this point if they just know where to look.
Yeah, I remember when I started, a friend gave me an old computer that just had Ableton on it. And before that, I was using GarageBand on my parents' iMac, those bulbous color computer thingies that Apple put out way back in the day. And yeah, there was just no information online. There was the Dogs on Acid forum, which was an old sort of drum and bass forum, and there was that was pretty much it at the time that I started. I think the Glitch Hop forum and all of that stuff came after, a few years after I started producing. So there was just no information. It's you had the Ableton manual, and that's about it. And you could ask questions on this Dogs on Acid forum, and most people on there didn't know either, because all they had was the manual as well. So it's
it's
yeah,
just
there was no you couldn't go to YouTube, for example, and be how do I make this specific bass sound, and then 50 videos perfectly explaining it show up.
Yeah, dear Lord. Actually, on the point of manuals, one sort of ethical use of AI that I've been doing recently has been putting manuals of plugins or softwares through there, just copy pasting the whole thing. I forget if it was you that put me onto that idea or someone else.
Possible. I've been making if you're in ChatGPT and you click on your icon up the top right, you can go to a page called My GPTs, and then you can create a GPT of your own that has its own knowledge base.
Oh,
and
really?
So Yeah, and so I've created a GPT that's just called like, Studio Wizard or whatever. And I just dump a ton of manuals into its knowledge base. And then whenever I want to know something about like, some certain plugin or like one of them, I dumped all the melder manuals into it, for example. And now if I go into there and ask it like, hey, if I wanted to do XYZ using the melder stuff, which plugin would I look at and how would I do it? And it's pretty good at answering.
That's a few steps above what I was doing. I literally just put the full manual in and then type my request afterwards. But that sounds like it makes a lot more sense to sort of store the data in advance. That's cool. I'm going to try that. I'm going to start doing that. The Studio Wizard Skybreak edition.
Yeah, it's sick. Yeah, you can just like create your own knowledge base and stuff for any GPT you want, which is kind of
Actually,
cool.
also on the note of GPT, for this album marketing campaign, I've been using a little bit of ChatGPT for inspiration. Some of it's ridiculous, but it's kind of fun. Like by the time I had the whole concept for the album together, like the whole black and white aesthetic, the subway theming, the like half US, half UK dual citizenship theme, and kind of the artist I was inspired by, I like ran in like a 2-page doc of all that. And I said, give me like 10 retention marketing ideas and 10 growth marketing ideas. And a lot of them are like insane. Like, I don't know, like go to 10 cities around the world and hide a USB in each one. And I'm like, yeah, I don't have that much money. But one that we actually ended up doing was like the New York subway rave. It was like, why don't you throw a rave on the actual subway? And it's like, I wouldn't have thought of that idea on my own. Obviously, I had to iron it out, and I don't recommend taking all your marketing advice from ChatGPT. But in terms of like getting the ideas rolling, when you've got a defined like vision and aesthetic, it's really fun to dump stuff in there. I don't know what else did I learn about. Oh yeah, I haven't even done this one yet, but I've got like a different icon for each track off the project. So I was gonna have. Going back to the idea of like hiding 10 USBs in each city is ridiculous, but we're going to be printing out 10 USBs, each with like a sticker corresponding to each track. And then I'm going to try and like send a couple to my friends in LA to hide around, and then send a couple in London to hide around. And then I'll hide a few in New York and stuff. And then it's like people can now geocache the icon that they found, because there'll be like a little sticker of it. And it'll be like, oh, it creates that sense of community. Because like, oh, I got the, I don't know, can't let go sticker USB or whatever, and then there'll be like an exclusive plate on that as well as the whole album. And then it encourages people to leak it a few days earlier. But I don't know, that part I kind of did in my own head, but I wouldn't have thought of all of that if I didn't initially type the whole vision into ChatGPT. So obviously it's not quite as like scientific as, putting in a plugin manual or something, but it's a dope way to do things out of your comfort zone and attack things at an angle you wouldn't have before.
Yeah. So your degree is in marketing. You said you're at university and you finish your degree next week or whatever. And you've mentioned previously to me that the degree you're doing is in marketing. How has that kind of worked its way into your music career? And I don't know, I guess like has it worked its way into does it change the way you think about music at all? Or?
I mean, in all fairness, I'm not going to a very prestigious university. I tried the 4-year thing, and just juggling that. But that was back in like 2021, so that was when I just started touring. I've got a hilarious story. I don't want to go off on too many tangents, but I basically played EDC in 2021, and then I had to sit in the Harrah's Casino Starbucks and speedrun an essay because I wasn't given an extension despite asking multiple times. But so I didn't end up doing the 4-year thing. However, I've been doing like the local community college thing on the side, just going on my own pace and doing a lot of it online. So the trade-off is it's really nice for availability because now I can still set my own hours. I have like a couple projects that I do by the end of the week and the whole 9 yards. But truthfully, because it's a community college level course, it doesn't go into a whole lot of depth about the marketing. A lot of it's quite outdated, if I'm honest. Like, one of our final projects in one of my classes was to do a 1-minute-long commercial. And I think of everything I've learned just in the music industry and as someone that has to market their own work and art. It's like, when was the last time you sat through an entire minute commercial willingly, right? Like, not often.
I guess if the idea is if you're giving the commercial to the right person, that for them it shouldn't feel like a commercial, right? It should feel like a solution to a problem that they've had for a while or something.
I guess so. I mean, 100%, but what we're trying to market are things like toothpaste or like, Trader Joe's salsa or something, right? And it's like, unless you've got the attention of an audience completely captive, like when they're watching a television, for example, and they're waiting for the program to come back on, or you're at the movies and you're waiting through the trailers for the main event, right? Then, yeah, you have a little bit more freedom to do a minute-long ad. But truthfully, if you're a small business owner or an entrepreneur, then you don't actually you have to pay a lot of money to get that sort of opportunity, and you don't have that much leverage over the consumer. So I feel like we should have learned how to get someone hooked on a thing within 5 seconds, because that's what the meta is like now. However, that said, I feel like just the pure need to do marketing related things every single week on top of my music thing and, attack things that I'm not as interested in with those same angles, I felt like it did actually benefit me a lot, especially now with this project where I'm doing these bold marketing decisions like subway raves and the whole nine. So I don't know.
Do you think studying marketing has changed how you look at your fans, not just as listeners, but as like a community to be studied or engaged with?
I feel like it less has changed how I look at my fans and more how I look at how I treat them, if that makes sense. So one of the first things you learn is the difference. Well, not that I learned this in school, but like one of the things you learn when you go down your own marketing rabbit hole is the difference between growth marketing and retention marketing. And retention marketing is obviously like experiential stuff. Like, I keep mentioning the subway rave. I'm sorry, I won't shut up about it. But like that, for example, or having some oddly specific reference or ARG puzzle in your game that like gets your fans talking and creating that sense of community because like, oh, this thing has depth. Whereas growth marketing is about how do I market this thing to someone who has no idea who I am, no context, and no reason to care. And what sucks about modern social media is a lot of your marketing strategies have to rely on that sort of growth thing. That's why we get the cringy content as we're scrolling down the TikTok feed of like thirst traps and like good looking people and they're just spamming analyzers everywhere, right? Like it's a thing and it works, and you need a little bit of it to grow your project. But unfortunately, I feel like algorithms prioritize keeping people engaged. So you have to make really engaging content targeted to people who have no idea who you are and have no reason to care. I'm trying to do a mix of them, and I'm trying to do growth marketing that I wouldn't consider cringeworthy like that, but I'm still learning about that because I've been very retention heavy. So I guess sort of what I've learned in school is some more techniques about the growth marketing end of things, but if I keep it completely honest with you, Bill, most of what I've learned marketing-wise has just come from trial and error and the school of hard knocks and looking at my own stats and seeing what works and communicating to people like Paper Skies, for example, I think is like, it's hard drilled into his head how to market a project in a genuinely cool way. And that's where I've gotten most of my stuff. But I've kind of had these lower pressure, lower stakes things to apply what I've learned to, and that's what I felt like the benefit of school was, because it's like getting an 80 instead of a 90 on an assignment is ultimately going to do a lot less damage than putting out a project that nobody cares about, or I don't know, like saying something too controversial that people get angry at you about. I don't know.
Do you ever worry that being like too strategic with marketing can pull you away from your authentic artistic instincts, or have you found that thinking about that side of stuff actually enhances both the art and the way that people interact with it?
I think one of my primary issues, especially back in the day, was I almost had this big soup in my head of like the marketing and the art. I almost was thinking too many steps in advance of like, how am I going to market this? Or how am I going to grow my project? And I see a lot of artists doing this now. That's why I think there's a big rise in those kind of meme TikTok remixes. It's like people aren't making art for the sake of art. They're making it more for the growth and the marketing aspect of it. For me, I almost consider it two separate roles. I don't think I make anything good if I have it too deeply ingrained in my head in advance. So I literally just kind of have been training to turn that part of my brain completely off and just letting stuff flow out of me, train myself to make the best stuff possible. And then once I've got a big amount of tunes all ready to go, or in the context of making this album, when I just naturally fell in love with making that UKG and drum and bass stuff, I like figured out what I could lean into. So I keep it as separate as I can. And I don't know, it's two different brains. That's how I'll put it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I've had that mentality since I pretty much started writing music, is just make whatever you want to make. Oh yeah, that's my cat jumping down from the...
Just dive bomb. That was crazy.
Yeah, my mentality has always been the same. It's just make whatever you want and figure out how to package it and market it later. And also, like, ideally, how to package it and market it, if you can, just hire people who are extremely good at that and think about that shit all day, and they can figure out how to package it and market it in such a way. Though I feel like, yeah, there has to be some of the artistic vision in the marketing as well. Otherwise it might come off as like sterile, or it might feel disconnected from the product or the album or whatever you want to call it. And yeah, I think it's yes, I definitely think they should be two separate brands. Yeah, I think starting from the position of how can I make something that does XYZ on Spotify or XYZ on Instagram or something, is just a weird place to start making art from.
And I feel like a lot of people see right through it. Like, here's the way that I've convinced myself it, right? It's like, would I rather gain 10,000 fans, let's say, over 5 years, making art that actually means something to me, and content that actually matters, pushing it? Would I rather have that slower burn to get to that 10,000? Or would I rather get 10,000 fans in a month? But the reason they discovered me is because I remixed, I don't know, what's like a funny meme right now?
I don't know, like Skibbity Toilet.
Yeah, like Skibbity Toilet dubstep remix. And then I posted a billion TikToks of me dancing around this room with it. It's like, yes, it's still 10,000 people, but did those 10,000 people feel a deep connection to what I was doing? Or were they just mildly entertained on their feed a little bit? You know what I mean? I feel the same way about how I put together my DJ sets, to be honest. Like, I've gotten a little better at playing to the crowd a little bit, but I feel like I would much rather play to 7 dead crowds, and just be my most authentic self, play what I want, play what I think represents my project the best, and just take 25 fans out of the 2,000 people there for each show, and just very slowly build a dedicated fan base out of that. Even though the social anxiety of playing on stage to people that do not care about what you're doing is very bad, but I feel like in the long run it's worth it, because you're touching people more deeply, and those people are going to stick around, in my opinion, a lot longer than the headliner who just got there because he remixed the right thing or made the right content that got the numbers up. You know what I mean? Obviously, you can find a happy medium and a halfway point, but I think the art has to be pure for this longer term strategy regardless. But I don't know.
Yeah, I guess another argument, or like something that I feel like I see sometimes, is artists start out doing the like pure marketing, like blitz scaling type thinking way of managing their career, and they build up a solid fan base. And then at that point, when they have a solid fan base, they try to switch into doing the thing that they actually want to do. And I feel like it can go either way. Like, sometimes if the fans really fuck with you, then they can accept that new thing that you're doing. But oftentimes what I see is people blitz scale like that, and then they try to do something else, and then all of the fans that liked them for the first thing they did start kind of hating on them. Like, a good example of that was, say, Ghetto, right? Like, I'm not saying that, I don't know how he felt making the original Riddim stuff he made. He probably loved it, and like, he probably wasn't making it purely for the marketing sake of it. But like, you know, he did all this Riddim stuff. He built up a massive fan base for that. And then he tried to kind of switch and do this like Flume style stuff. And every night on some tour that he was doing would just get booed, and then eventually ended up canceling the tour.
Yeah, no, that's the tragic thing. Honestly, that was one of my biggest fears writing this project, like my fans not accepting it. But I do feel like the difference is I obviously love Getter. I think his old stuff is sick. I think Visceral was really, really good. I've even kind of noticed it on my ends. I loved everything I've done Half-Blood wise. But I know I did a little bit of like a clickbaity, not really clickbaity, but like a very quickly put together remix of Sticky with this really underground guy called Splitter. We turned it around like 2 days after the Chromacopia album dropped, and I love
like some beef that happened over that, right?
No, I was gonna get into that, but it was a lot of fun to put together, and obviously it still was very authentically me, just a little bit different from the level of authenticity of this new project, but it was still very fun to put together. And when we put it out, a lot of people were almost accusing us of doing that exact thing, that like, oh, something popular dropped and you just made a remix, blah, blah, blah. But as a result, a lot of my fans kind of came to my defense, and it kind of blew up these posts and made my Twitter comments into like a war zone. And I ended up gaining like a crap ton of fans from it. And I was like, oh, this is like awesome. So now when I release my album, all those fans are going to like what I did there and check out the album. And the result is not quite that. It's like I have an inflated follower count, but a lot of them are waiting until I do something notable, like another remix of Sticky or the next popular track, right? To come check out the stuff. They're not going and streaming my new album as much, right? However, I almost feel like even though the stats are a little bit lower for this album, I like feel each one more because it's more authentic to me, because everyone that's going and streaming it actually cares about what I'm doing. So maybe I caught a few stragglers with that Sticky remix, but not everyone that listened to it stuck around, if that makes sense.
Right. Is Half-Blood out, by the way?
I don't know when this is coming out. So
it'll be out in like a couple of weeks maybe.
Cool. No, it is not. It comes out in July.
Okay.
But the first singles are as of now, and maybe by the time this comes out, it completely turns around and I'm headlining Ultra, but I kind of doubt it. But yeah, I don't know. I'm trying something out here of just being wholly authentic with everything and making content to promote this that matters, and just really listening to myself this time instead of trying to get some like ulterior motive or gain. And I'm not used to looking at the lower stats because of it. You know, I'm very used to I'm completely self-releasing this project, so I'm very used to like being in X label playlist or Y TikTok influencers thing that the label paid for or whatever, or having someone else's community stream the tune. It's like, no, this is like 110% me. But as a result, it makes every stream like feel more like, I don't know. I could yab about it for a while.
For sure.
Yeah.
How do you think one should balance trying to impress a non-sentient algorithm which has like this appetite for regularity, virality and retention metrics, while also trying to make something deeply human and emotionally resonant? Like, do you think that I feel like there's this Venn diagram where on one half you have shit that the algorithm prefers to push and stuff that gets algorithmically shown to people more often, and then on the other side you have what people actually enjoy. And then I feel like there's this spot like right in the middle where you can both create something that people really deeply connect with and enjoy, and also gets algorithmically pushed. How do you balance that? Or do you even think of this?
Oh, I think of it all the time. Right. You're honestly nailing it. That point that you've just mentioned is exactly what I'm trying to hit with all of my content for this project.
I'm like, what's your method for identifying what type of content falls into those two buckets, and then how are you trying to get it to be in the middle of those?
So I feel like at first I follow my soul and I think about what actually matters to me. And then I like look at how I can make it engaging, right? So I think of the story that I want to tell. I think one piece of content that I'm extremely proud of is I went to Croydon in the south of London, which is, you probably know this. I'm kind of preaching to the choir, but that's kind of like where dubstep was invented.
I'm not British, by the way.
What's that?
That's right. I said I'm not British, by the way. That's racist. I'm Australian.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. That's crazy. But yeah, essentially to the viewers that don't know, there was this vinyl store there called Big Apple Records, run by Hatcha and Mala and a couple of these other people. And they were at first just kind of like a electronic music, two-step garage vinyl store in Croydon. And eventually they started pushing out vinyls of this new thing called dubstep, which was kind of the staff members of the store were making it, and then people like Scream and Benga and Koki were starting to like sell their records to the store to be resold and stuff. And they ended up creating a whole new genre just by like slowing down two-step garage a little bit. And I went to the old location of the vinyl store on my way to a studio session with PVC when we tracked the antimatter vocals. And I just kind of was washed over with this overwhelming sense of sadness because I walked there and there wasn't like a plaque or a graffiti tag or like anything to indicate that there was anything there that was important at all. You know, it was just a nail salon. Like I was thinking about doing a bit of content where I go in and actually get my nails done, but that felt a little teetering a little bit too much into the cheesy corniness. So I was like, let me try and recount exactly how I felt about this moment. And so I kind of did this fake voicemail thing and spliced it together with footage that I recorded that day of the thing, right? And again, similarly to the rest of the album, it didn't perform insanely well stats-wise, but I started to get these comments of just like, this made me emotional. You know, you truly actually cared about the roots of the genre enough to go check this place out, you know, and actually scout it. And I ended up seeing these larger DJs interacting, including Koki himself, who was one of those Big Apple Records OG first wave dubstep people whose music I have researched vigorously now. And yeah, I just feel this buzz about it. And it didn't perform poorly. I think it did quite well in the end, that little content piece, and it sort of gave a nice piece of context to what I was feeling while writing this project, I guess, that like, I don't know. But that would be an example of content I feel like hits that halfway point. If that makes sense. It's like finding something that actually has emotional resonance with you and then figuring out a way to kind of put it out there in a way that's going to matter to someone who has no idea who you are.
When you look at your most successful content or songs, do you feel like they're successful because they resonated with people or because they were algorithmically optimized?
I mean, it depends what you mean by successful, because I do kind of vary it per release. For example, my track Comet with Keepsake, I love that tune. It's great. But, and it does actually have some emotional meaning to me. It's all about, you know, loving someone and sitting under this crazy stars and, you know, a scene where you're stargazing with the person you love the most and you can tell that they're broken, but you like accept them anyway. Like obviously the tune has a lot of emotional resonance to me, but because we were releasing it with NCS, part of it was, oh, how well is this going to stream? How is this going to be optimized for playlists? And I would say, like, yes, it is quite a successful tune. I play it out at quite a few shows, which is strange because it's a very, like, old school 2014 Monster Cat style thing, which obviously doesn't really go off live, but it's the type of tune that people know, so I consider that quite a successful release because people are aware of it. It performed well on the numbers standpoint or whatever. But with this new stuff, my definition of success is very different. I personally have trained myself to not care as much about how it streams. I more so care about how it's affecting people. I care about whose radar I'm getting on by releasing this kind of thing. And yeah, I don't know. It varies per release, that my definition of success, I guess. I don't know if that answers your question correctly.
Yeah, for sure. In your opinion, is fighting for visibility in the algorithms a necessary evil, or do you think that you can still build a meaningful audience while rejecting it completely?
I think learning the trends of what works is a little important for that growth marketing standpoint of things. But simultaneously, I've seen so many people get lost in the numbers, including some of my closer friends. You know, I'm not going to mention any names, but they want to make sure one post does better than the next. And these are the types of people that were like laughing at these contents of people just dancing around their room or whatever. And now it's like, they're the ones doing it. It's like, so I think you can get very, very lost in it. However, I do think it's important to learn how you can tell your story in a way that the algorithm won't entirely reject. I'm not saying you have to make algorithm bait. In fact, I think the more that you try to bait the algorithm, the more people can see through it, right? But if you can just learn trends like hook in the first few seconds, you know, keep the video sort of short, and then apply that to the stuff that actually matters, then you're cooking with gas, and you can tell your story in a meaningful way that still captures the algorithm. So I think it could be a necessary evil if you're at least trying to make it traditionally on a numbers standpoint. However, I also respect the heck out of people who just say, nah, fuck it, I'm doing things my way. Like a couple of my favorite artists, like G Jones and Turnian Sounds, like they're not even on TikTok. I don't think any of them have made a single piece of content, but they're still kind of crushing it, you know? So it's all just a matter of who you are, and yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, that makes sense. I want to talk a little bit about, you mentioned for your new album, Half-Blood, that you did like a big deep dive on the OG dubstep / UKG type stuff. What did your research process into this look like on a day-to-day basis?
So a lot of it was just like searching for vinyl rips on YouTube. I'm looking for things like with 200, 300 views from ages and ages ago. You can find them. I was listening to a lot of like mixes from Hatcha. Hatch is one of those OG DJs. He still has like a bunch of dub plates on like physical vinyls, which, you know, expire after 50 listens or something, right? And I was looking for these sets that they did back in the day, and some of them are just like the crustiest YouTube videos in like 320p or something. But I would just listen to a lot of these and really just close my eyes and sit exactly in this chair. There's a little like forest a couple blocks away from me, and sometimes I'll just walk there with my AirPods and just really listen to how the groove is interacting with the sub and drums and stuff. I also, not that this is necessarily like old school vibes, but I started going to more UKG and drum and bass events in New York City. Like I just take the train in, go and just observe, and I started to feel this almost feeling of jealousy, right? Like not jealousy in terms of ticket sales or, oh, this person is doing something much bigger than me, but almost like, oh, this is the type of vibe I want at my shows, and the types of offers and support slots that I'm taking aren't like this, you know? A lot of them are a lot more Americanized raves where people want to show up and hear the 15 Millennium songs that they know mashed up into like a heavy drop, right? Like these are the types of shows that I've been taking. However, they're not the ones that I'm having fun attending. So almost by going to these shows, I felt like I was conducting research on how I want this project to look in the live space. And I'm still working towards getting my offers together with that. But I'm like, these are the types of fans I want to have and the types of experiences I want to curate. Also on the research end, I watched a lot of like old crusty tutorials. I wanted to put myself into the minds of like 2007 through 2012 people. So I watched like the old tutorials on like FL Studio 9.
The old Roscoe one where he where he tells you to give your girlfriend some money so she can go get her nails done.
That's the one. I love that video. I became addicted to Haribo for a little while after that. It's really funny. He just mentions like, you know, if you smoke, go get some cigarettes, and if you want a snack, go get Haribo. And I started eating. I'd never thought about going out of my way to get Haribo, but then that just like
that's like a gummy bear.
Yeah, it's like a gummy bear thing. It's a lot bigger in the UK, but you can get it here. Right. And so I just impulse bought a whole bag of Haribo, and I wrote, I think, what tune was it? After I watched that tutorial, I can't remember, but I wrote
one of. Grab ciggies too. You gotta smoke the cigarettes if you want to get.
I don't smoke. I like I like having my lungs. I feel like all the conditioning to not smoke has really hit my generation pretty well, I think, at least in the States. But
Yeah, 100%.
which is pretty good. So yeah, those are just a couple different types of research. And also, like, as the visual aesthetic started to come together more. Oh, another artist I listened to a bunch was Burial. I got inspired by the very minimal visual aesthetics that he has, but almost like I wanted to take the vibe that he gave and like modernize it. Like, what would Burial look like in the modern day if he like played the content game more? And I'm not saying played the content game, because I could imagine him going, "Did I just write the song in the summer?" And then like Archangel comes on. But more so like, what if he had a fully realized visual aesthetic that just looked like Burial? And that's like what I wanted. And since
He kind of does, though, I feel like.
Yeah, I mean, he absolutely does, but I'm talking more about like on like a photograph end and everything. I don't know.
But I think what he doesn't do is also part of the visual aesthetic. Like the fact that he doesn't put photos out of himself, and the fact that he doesn't, have that much color in his album covers and stuff. I feel like that's like the things that you don't do, I feel like, is almost what makes the aesthetic what it is.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I love that mystery about him, but I don't know. I wanted to do like, how can I do mystery but less mysterious? I don't know. That's such like a dumb quote, but I get where you're coming from. And I think that mystery about him is what makes it so cool. But unfortunately for this project, I just didn't feel like it was viable in the modern music economy. So I'm trying to do a 2025 Burial, I guess, look. But ever since I started doing that, I like viewed the world through this lens of Half-Blood. Like, it's difficult to explain. Graffiti started to pop out to me more when I was just driving down the highway through, a city area. Like, stuff that I would have just passed by before stuck out to me. And I went into like the subway systems of New York and London and the whole 9 yards. And instead of just getting from point A to point B, there was like this increased sense of value in it inherently, because I knew I was making a project about it. And I don't know, like I was walking home a little bit inebriated from a show in London, back to my grandfolks' place at like midnight or something. And I saw this like little fox running through the road. It was a little bit misty and it was nighttime. There was just like the light of the street light, and you could just see the mist underneath the beams. And I was like, this is so fucking Half-Blood. And I get to decide what is and what isn't. And I don't know. I feel like almost everything I've done the past 2 years has been research of some sort. That went on a big tangent. That's a far cry from the original UK people. But I don't know. I feel
Sorry, go on.
I was going to say, I feel like when you care deeply enough about something, the research just happens by existing.
Right. Were there any moments where stuff just clicked and you were like, oh, this is the missing ingredient from where I was with UKG and OG dubstep, and what I need to add to my stuff to make it more legitimate?
Yeah, so I think the main thing was like groove and like hats, A lot of my previous music relied a lot on like power and energy and, big shimmering melodies and just like a billion sounds sequentially, right? I think by learning to make UKG and drum and bass, I learned a lot more about subtlety, and I learned about maturity, and I learned about how things stand out a little bit more. I wrote this project around the concept of the color splash. It's like a graphic design technique where you have an all black and white image, which was originally filmed in color, and there's just one element that's colored in, and it's just super duper saturated. And so therefore it stands out a bunch. So let's say, for example, you had a picture of a British telephone box, right? And just the red of the telephone box is showing. You're gonna be drawn to that a lot more inherently. So not only am I applying this to the visual direction, but also the music. I feel like if you have too many colors in an image, none of them really stick out. But if you just have a mature backbone of like solid bass line, solid drum, solid groove, then when you add those like pops of hyper saturated color-based synths and shimmers, they just stand out way, way, way more. And I'm not going to be making this forever, obviously, the UKG and drum and bass. I'm just going to obviously make what I feel like making, and I'll probably go back and make some more of those splashy vomit stuff. But by stripping back all the elements to what really matters, I noticed how much I relied on impressing people with the sound design aspect. And it challenged my songwriting in a way, and it challenged my rhythmic and groove chops in a way. So I don't know. I think one of the biggest moments that really clicked for me was I went on Reddit and I just literally Googled, like, yo, how did Burial get his old drums? And I wasn't expecting to find anything.
Metal Gear Solid shit and whatnot. Wasn't he using like sounds from Metal Gear Solid, like the bullets and shit?
I think, yeah, for certain perks, but the main point that I read was that he would take like an almond break or like a classic jungle break, bring it into a sampler, and just like pitch it down a shit ton. So instead of a, you get a, and the lower ones have a lot less high end. So when you just get a little chop of that sample, you get like a broken, almost rimshotty sound. And so I gave it a go myself and I ran it through my own processing chain. And I was like, yo, this is it. You take a big almond break, you pitch it down a shit ton, and then you drag that into SliceX and you almost resequence the same groove. But it's just a lot more like broken and choppy. I don't know. And that led me to an epiphany that I could actually drag anything into SliceX. So I started doing this thing where I would use a program called Edison in FL Studio and just record everything going into my master. And I realized that if you click up and down the sample browser, you get a bunch of different percussion sounds or even like, I don't know, little piano stabs or something. And if you just get a bunch of these in a row, you can then drag that into a sampler. A lot of samplers nowadays automatically detect the transients, and you can just create your own drum machine using randomly selected things, right? So I can get like 90 shakers, let's say, and then I can create a groove out of those very, very quickly and very, very easily. And I can rely, instead of having to like drag them into the playlist and manually sequence a groove that way, now it's almost like automatic. And I can, if I don't like what I'm doing, I can just use the shift and up key to get a whole new groove. And just through trial and error, I get things that like sound really cool to me. I've been yapping on this point for a while, but I have one more point. I think the other real catalyst for this UKG love was when I worked with Cloud None on Feeling Free. I was playing a show in his city in early, like spring 2023 when I was on the Chime tour, I think. And yeah, I was just like, yo, like I'm a big fan of your garage stuff. I think it'd be really fun to do like a chill thing. So he picked me up from the train station and we listened to Quest for Fire by Skrillex because it had like just came out at that point. And we got really inspired by it because he was like, you know, I don't normally make like bass music on this project, but you know, I'd love to like give it a whirl here. And I'm like, yo, I don't usually make like swingy, groovy garage shit, but I'm down to give it a whirl. And so Feeling Free kind of came out of that. But when I was watching him work, I was so fascinated by how little he was actually doing, right? Like, all of it relies in just really solid songwriting and just this viscerality and groove. So I just watched him sequence these loops that were just so... And I was like, well, how are you getting that? And he's like, oh, well, I just keep the eighth notes in a grid, and then I pay zero attention to a swing factor between them. So you can get these really jaunty rhythms. By having the E and so you have a one E and if you have the E and just kind of off grid every single time, you get this like derpy, jaunty feel. And he says, since you have more stability at a faster tempo on those eighth notes, that's how you get a groove. You just feel it. And I'm like, whoa, that's so different from what I've been doing. So that was another big moment of this project. All right, big yap. Your turn.
Yeah, going back to the first thing you're talking about, which is color splash. I feel like this is something in a lot of DJ sets that I just see a lot, where an artist will play like nothing but their own tunes for an hour, and by the end of it, everything just kind of feels gray, and it doesn't feel like anything is hitting anymore because everything is just like saturated in the exact same way and sort of processed in the exact same way. And I'm very guilty of that myself. And so one thing that I've been trying to do more in DJ sets is kind of play with different extremely contrasting stuff. Like you'll have like an extremely subdued thing that's very groovy, and then you'll go into like something that's very bright and maximalist, and then go into like a techno song, and then go into, and it's kind of like you're painting with these like extreme different colors one after the other, and I feel like it makes shit pop a lot more.
Yeah, no, it keeps things interesting. I've been applying that to my own edits and stuff. I also get very in my head, and I'm like, oh, I have to play as many originals as possible. But I feel like as a result, it's fun to experiment with like different edits of a song. So for example, someone might come to my show and expect to hear, I don't know, Out of Frame, and then I'll, instead of the main drop, I drop into a psytrance thing. But it's interesting that you think of that on like a mixdown level as well.
I think of it more on a DJ set level.
Yeah.
The songs themselves, they're kind of components of the DJ set. And the DJ set to me is kind of just like a meta track. It's like an hour-long song built out of other songs. What aspects of UKG and DMB do you think are the hardest to internalize without having grown up immersed in that culture?
Ooh. In terms of making it, or in terms of like listening to it?
Just any aspect, I suppose.
Any
like
aspect.
What is something that you feel like you've internalized that was hard for you to internalize when you were trying to understand the genres more?
That's a great question. Like I was saying, going back to the color splash concept, space. There's so much space involved in these genres. Like, it's not like bro step or dubstep where things are like, like you can have a drop with exactly one element that just hits on the downbeat, and then it's just 4 bars of like groove. And that feels like something I would meme back in the day. Like, I'd be like, oh, yo, what is this? Like, does this person even know how to produce? But to get a song with so little happening, to get a crowd moving, is the most difficult task ever when that's not what you've grown up on. And I also think, like, in the live space, I'm very used to going to, I go to a lot of, like, rock shows as well as dubstep shows. So I'm very used to, like, headbanging or, like, finger gunning or whatever. But, like, at a drum and bass show, the way that you're supposed to dance in the crowd at different tempos is a little different. And same deal with UKG. Also, just the way that it's mixed in the context of DJ sets, I feel, is very different as well. I'm very used to dubstep DJing where it's like, you have your drop and then usually there's like a big atmospheric section, or like the songs are a bit more engineered where it's like, oh, this is where the vocal comes in. So don't DJ here, right? Like there's all these rules. Whereas when you've got a song with a consistent groove throughout it, like a UKG track, or even a D&B tune to an extent. D&B is a little bit more similar to dubstep because it has those long atmospheric sections. You can kind of just mix shit in whenever, and it will usually sound good, as long as the swings of the hats are kind of loosely similar. So those were a few elements of it that I wasn't quite used to in the past, but I don't know.
Nice. There's another thing that you mentioned to me prior to this podcast that I want to talk about, which is psychedelics.
Oh boy.
So you mentioned that you had a psychedelic experience that unblocked your writer's block. How do you? Yeah, I'm just curious to hear about this story.
Okay, bet. All right, disclaimer to younger viewers watching. This is not me endorsing drugs. This is simply me talking about my experience with them. I have not taken shrooms many times, but on this particular one, it was pretty ridiculous. I'm not going to mention the name of who I did this with, but it's someone that means a lot to me, and has inspired me for a very long time. But I was visiting him a couple days after my 21st birthday, and I was like, I've never tried psychedelics. You seem like the type of person who would be good to trip with for the first time. Are you willing to do this with me? And he's like, absolutely, I would love to. Let's start with like a medium dose. So I didn't get anything like crazy, but we took the stuff. I was kind of in like a dark place at this point in my life. I I've been seen as one of the figureheads of color bass, and I felt somehow responsible for the genre. As its popularity was dwindling, I felt like I had to be the one to like get it popping again, and I put so much pressure on myself with it, and as a result, just wasn't happy with what I was making. I would like start an idea in a different genre, but then I'd be like, oh no, I don't deserve to make this. I'm the color bass guy, so I have to make that. And so I was like, he's like, what do you want to get out of going into this trip? And I'm like, I'd like to understand why I'm thinking that way. And I'd like to not think that way. And I'd like to understand, almost observe what my brain does in a freer state. And he's like, all right, bet. I'm glad you set up some intentions. So we drank some mushroom tea, and we kind of just went to a field near his house. And eventually when it kicked in, we were bumping Porter Robinson on the speaker. The first vision I had was like, it's really stupid. It was like a big barnyard, and there were all these like farm animals, and we were listening to Lifelike by Porter Robinson. That's the opening of Nurture. And I was like conducting the barnyard animals, and they were all like dancing along or whatever. It's just psychedelic bullshit. And then I got this overwhelming feeling at some point in the trip that me and this other person were born exactly like 10 years apart, and that we were these two prophets sent from some higher divinity to make music, and that all the pain and trouble of the capitalist world and our traumas were preventing us from living out this prophecy, and that we should have faith in our abilities because we were placed here to make things, to move people. And obviously, you know, when I say it now, it sounds like a lot of really heady shit, right? But it instilled in me this confidence that, yes, this is what I'm meant to do. And that hasn't left me since the trip at all. And I think ways I've interpreted this in a way that don't require you having 8 hours of being really goofy is that writer's block comes from a combination of emotions and ego. A lot of what I was dealing with was that ego of, I'm the color-based dude, I gotta do the thing, you know, or I'm insane, so everything I make has to be insane. And as a result, when you have off days or you have days where you want to experiment, you don't allow yourself to do so. And the other half of it is emotions. When you are feeling this frustration with the world, with something going on in your life, I think obviously I always produce better when I'm looking at these retrospectively, for example. But when you're in the absolute thick of it and everything seems to be going wrong for you and you can't write the right tune, that's just going to compound, and music's going to become extremely stressful for you. And I'd love to someday work out a formula for how it works on that front. But after that trip, I started leaning more into hobbies that I cared about. And I got really into urban exploration, for example. And I did a playthrough of the entire Zelda series, for example, and hiked a lot more and treated myself better. Like because I had this confidence that I was a prophet, I didn't need to constantly prove my worth anymore, because I had some deity tell me that I was actually doing everything okay. And as a result, it's been a lot easier for me to sit down at the dawn, just make what I want. And I've been making a lot more IDM stuff recently, nothing that I'm going to put out on Skybreak, but I don't feel bad about spending moments making things that I'm not intending to put out on my main artist project anymore, because I feel like everything that we do can turn into a learning experience of what we should do, what we shouldn't do, what feels right, what doesn't feel right. We take these emotions that are floating around in our head and like shit them out into like a thing. And when we allow ourselves to be emotionally free, we're allowing ourselves to also be emotionally free when we're sitting down and making things for our main artist project. So I'm sitting on, and actually, like, I don't want to spoil too much about this because this is some secret marketing stuff for the Half-Blood project, but I found out that the IDM stuff that for ages I wasn't allowing myself to make was actually worth something, and I found a very, very cool way to put it out. So I know it's like the 1,000 times repeated cliche, but I really do feel like if you allow yourself to write everything that comes to you as it comes, when you have to go and write down a thing that's a little bit more corporatized or has a little bit more ulterior motive, it's going to come out of you way easier because there's not this part of you that's just screaming at you to come out. So, yeah, that's what I got out of it.
Do you think it's more egotistical to be like, I'm the color bass guy, I got to do color bass? Or do you think it's more egotistical to be like, I'm a prophet put here by a deity to make music for people?
Yeah, well, when I say it out loud, that's some like Kanye pilled shit. I don't actually believe that, for what it's worth. I don't believe that I am a prophet put here. I think I'm just a dude that got very lucky in his circumstance and has been writing music for a very long time and has honed some skills in and learned how to make things that I actually care about. So
I think it's funny how psychedelics kind of go both ways, where if you do a little bit, you're like, oh my God, I'm a shaman or like something like that. But if you do a ton, then you have this like complete ego death and you're like, I'm just one with the universe, whatever this means. It's just like a state that I am in and I can't do anything about.
I've yet to do enough to get an ego death. Frankly, I don't even know if I want to. Maybe someday. I'm just
healthy.
It's probably a good idea, honestly. In a way, I feel like there was a little bit of ego death to it, and not quite to that level, but I feel like in this human world, like you've said, yes, it's clearly more egotistical to be like, oh, I'm a prophet than, oh, I'm just the color base guy, right? But I feel like sometimes it's healthy to imagine ourselves in these circumstances where we're not forced into a role that we need to uphold. I think we work in art. And yes, art has been very capitalized and there's a lot of people trying to make money off of us and the whole 9 yards. But it doesn't mean that everything we do has to be determined by other people. And that's more what 2 years of processing that trip has gotten me to. I don't need to I'm not divinely obligated to fulfill the role of anything other than making what I like in the hopes that it will genuinely touch someone in the way that it touched me while I was creating it. And I think that to me is less egotistical than, oh, I'm the color-based guy, I have to uphold this role. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. Cool, man. Well, where can people find you? And you said the album's going to be out in July. Where can people find that when it's out? And how can people stay updated on the shit you're doing and whatnot?
Yeah, so the album will come out on July 11th. And it's going to be out everywhere. Spotify, SoundCloud, YouTube. I've been posting stuff on Newgrounds. Actually, Newgrounds is hilarious because it's so neglected. Nobody
posts anymore. That's where Space Laces started, I think.
Yeah, no, legit. It's where Porter
under the name Corn and Beans or something like that.
Yeah, that's the one. I was about to say, I think that's where Porter and Madeon started, but I actually don't think that's true. I think it was on some dead forum now. But yeah, a lot of artists just don't post on there anymore because they feel like it's irrelevant, but there's a ton of really hungry fans there. So I've been posting that for a while, and I've got a little community of people who play Geometry Dash and make like cute levels for my tunes. But anyway, yeah, YouTube, Spotify, SoundCloud, Newgrounds, Bandcamp, anywhere you can find music, you'll be able to find the album. By now, I think 2 or 3 singles will be out. And yeah, if you want to drop me a follow, if what I've said has been meaningful to you in any way, Skybreak EDM on most platforms. And if you ever want to chat, I'm pretty responsive to DMs on Instagram, so fire me a request if you need any clarification on stuff. But yeah, thank you for having me, by the way. This was cool. I hope I didn't yap too hard.
Nah, it was all good. All right, man. Thank you.
Cool.